All right, hey, it's September 9th, bringing you a Lake of the Ozarks fishing report brought to you by James and Denise Dill Guide Service. Uh, it's been a few weeks since I done a report, and kind of like we talked before, it was just kind of the same thing going on. Well, now we've reached that time of year where things are changing, and they're starting to change pretty quick. We've had some cool nights, a lot of fog in some of the mornings, and obviously that tells us that that water's cooling off. We've probably dropped in the last week and a half. We probably dropped 6 to 8 degrees. Probably more like 6 degrees. We're down. We're hovering around 79, 80 degrees. From up, a couple weeks ago, we were up 85, 86 degrees. So when we start that downturn of temperatures, and of course the days are getting shorter, that really triggers the bass. They start moving, they start feeding a little differently. They really start chasing and pushing shad a lot more. A lot more fish that maybe were deep are coming up shallow, and they're starting to feed. And they'll start, they'll progress a lot more throughout the next, this September, October, say 2 months, until we hit the peak of the topwater, are feeding, and then it starts slowing down once that water temp gets real low. But right now, like I said, the water temp, I was out yesterday. Denise was out several times last week. I was out a few times last week, and we watched that water temp going down to where, like yesterday, I said it was 79 degrees yesterday. So we're down into the 70s. I think tonight is supposed to be cool. Tomorrow night's supposed to be real cool. And then even maybe a little bit of rain. And that'll really drop that water temp a lot more. And obviously your shallows, the water temp drops a lot more quicker in the shallows. So that's where the bass will go. The shad will go back there. And it just creates a shallow bite, and it just opens up a whole new thing. So, there's a lot of things going to go on this weekend as far as tournaments wise. There's one out of Red Oak. There's a couple out of PB2. I know Denise and I are fishing the last Anglers in Action Sunday out of PB2. Looking forward to that. That's our last qualifying event. There's I believe it's a charity tournament. Was it Cops and Bobbers out of Red Oak tomorrow? There's another one out of PB2 tomorrow, and I'm sure there's a few other small ones. So the lake will starting to get a little bit busier with tournaments. But man, if you're coming down, you haven't been down for a while, or even if you have been down lately and you ain't been here for a week or so, expect some changes. Because boy, I seen it yesterday. I've been on a pretty good, pretty consistent bite, and yesterday kind of, I don't know how to say it, just kind of spun me for a little while. We were still able to catch them, but they weren't as predictable as they had been, let's say, the last month. And that's just because things are changing, the water's cooling, and fish start feeding differently. So, baits right now, and where to go, what area of the lake, coves, main lake, whatever, all of it. You can do every bit of it. And that's, I just use, like yesterday as an example, we went shallow. We caught a real nice, I'd say a 4-pounder on a Zoom finesse worm. On a 1/4 ounce shaky pro head by Crockett Gator. Flipping probably in 4 foot of water under a shallow dock. And that's kind of what I'm wanting to do, but it's not real consistent. It's not consistent enough that you can say, I'm just going to go flip shallow docks all day and catch 5 good solid keepers, because I'm not sure you can do that. We mixed it up. We threw some topwater yesterday. We caught a couple good ones on topwater late in the day, and that's going to start going. As far as topwater in September, it seems like there's always an early topwater bite, first thing in the morning, early. But then don't overlook the afternoon topwater bite. I would say from noon to 3. For whatever reason, I think a lot of times the shad run the center of coves, and they're out in the creeks, and early in the mornings. you know, and fish have moved up shallow to feed at night, maybe crawfish or shad or bluegill, and there's still some lingering around there earlies, and that's when you catch them on topwater. As far as the afternoon, a lot of times, to me, it seems like once we get later in the afternoon, the sun gets up, for whatever reason, some shad will move up to the bank, bluegill move back to the bank, and there's a lot of activity right off of the bank. You know, I'm assuming they're up there feeding on the moss that are on some of these rocks, and it creates an afternoon topwater bite. So one thing you'll notice this week, they pulled some water a little bit, and they dropped the lake probably, I don't know, 4 to 6 inches, and it's really exposed. If you really pay attention, the rocks that have a lot of moss that were growing on those rocks, and obviously that's what the bluegill are up there eating. The shad get up there and feed on that moss. You know, they start pulling the water. It takes some of that moss, you know, out of whatever they're going to be able to get up there and eat. But there's still some up there. And in the afternoon, some fish move up shallow, and they'll feed on that moss, and that brings your bass. So just don't overlook that. But as far as everything else, you can literally go out right now. It's the 1st of September. It's the same thing every year. You can go throw a 10-inch power worm, and you can find brush piles and 12 to 15 foot of water, and catch you some fish. It's not real predictable, but if they're in the brush piles, and you know brush piles, you can run that 10 to 12 foot of water with a big 10-inch power worm, the Zoom mag finesse worm on a 1/4 ounce shaky head from Craft Gator. It's still producing. It's going to produce for a long time. It's probably the most consistent bait down here as far as just being able to get bites on any given day. It does seem to me like on these tougher, real bright, calm days, you'll want to throw the smaller Zoom finesse worm. Where like on a cloudy day or maybe a low pressure day, maybe the Zoom mag finesse trick worm, that's a longer one. When they're a little more aggressive or feeding on bigger shad, if you've seen a lot of them, you might want to switch up and throw that bigger worm. And that's still, you know, from anywhere from, I would say the majority of fish we're catching are 10 foot or less of water. So if you're going back in creeks or coves, maybe start at 10 foot and kind of fish your way back, back all the way to you run out of water, and just try to get a few bites in any particular creek. And each creek is different. You may catch the majority of your fish in 8 to 10 foot of water around a lot of shad, if that's where the congregation of shad are, or you may go to the next creek and the majority of them might be in 3 foot of water, or even backed out to 15 foot of water. You just really got to pay attention to where you're seeing the shad, And the best way, like I do it, I'll just put my Garmin on my side scan or my down image, and I'll just idle right down through the center of a creek or a cove, and I'll just watch my graph until I start seeing them big balls of shad, and then I'm going to slow down, and that's where I'm going to start fishing. And you'll notice it might be, you might start seeing them, and as you get back there, halfway back in the creeks, or 3/4 way, or maybe way in the back, but wherever you start seeing that big concentration of shad, that's where you want to start fishing. So, like I said, these worms are working good. The topwater baits are working pretty good. Everything, the spook, the good old spook, the Chapo, the Berkeley Chapo has 3 different sizes, a 90, a 105, and a 120. Maybe just kind of see what kind of shad you're seeing in that general area. If you're seeing a bunch of real small shad, maybe throw that small one around. Just kind of imitate what they might be feeding on. If you're seeing a lot more bigger ones, go to the bigger Chapo or bigger Whopper Plopper. Whopper Plopper has them same. They got these little bitty Whopper Ploppers, and then they got the big ones here that I'll tend to throw the big one. Because usually when I'm throwing the topwater, I'm looking for big bites. So I'm throwing the biggest. Well, actually, there's one size bigger than this, But the bigger whopper ploppers, on whopper ploppers, you'll probably if you're really out there serious fishing tournaments, you're going to want to switch the hooks out on the whopper ploppers to a smaller diameter. Gamakatsu makes a real good one to switch out. Mustad makes a good one. The hooks that come on the whopper ploppers, they're just too big a diameter, and you just seem like you lose a lot of fish on them. So something you might want to consider is switching out your treble hooks on the whopper plopper baits. Now the Chapos hooks seem to be a little better. They're a little smaller diameter, and you seem to keep your fish hooked up a little bit better on the Chapos. So I will say that about Chapos is the hooks seem to be better. Other baits you can throw, rattle trap this time of year. Just go down through the center. You start seeing these shad, concentration shad. Throw these rattle traps. Just throw out in the middle of these creeks, out in the center. Let that thing sink down through them shad and rip that thing up. Kind of yo-yo it, reel it steady. Kind of start and stop it. It's got a lot of vibration, a lot of movement, and it kind of looks. You're trying to bust it into these shads, scatter these shad out, and your rattle traps in there, and they can hone in on it, and they'll get it. You'll catch a lot of fish on a rattle trap this time of year. You can go back on the flats and just kind of pan cast all around these big flats with a rattle trap. It's a really good bait this time of year to catch some fish. Just back there feeding on shad that aren't really relating anything. Say wood or docks or structure. They're just following these shad and they're underneath the shad. So they're really hard to kind of target unless you're throwing something like a rattle trap or maybe a crankbait, even a bigger crankbait, a square bill, maybe a 6XD, or even some of them deep diving crankbaits. Just run them right down through the center of these creeks and get below your shad. If you really pay attention to your graphs, you'll see the balls of shad, and then you'll see big arches or something underneath. And there can be anything. They can be catfish. A lot of times they're bass though, and you don't want to miss out on that. It's pretty easy. You're just casting a bait, letting it sink down, and you're bringing it through it. Very good retrieve. A lot of times just a fast retrieve. These fish are really active right now, so a pretty fast retrieve will get them to react. So that's something you can try. If you're not getting bit up towards the bank or around docks, you may have to just kind of go out and nowhere land, like I call it, and fan cast a crankbait, or say like a rattle trap, something like that. Another bait that's coming on and this is the time when it really shines, is the Crocagator X-Bite. The X-Bite comes in two colors or two sizes, the 1/2 and 3/4. The only difference is the blade. It's the same size head, but the blade is different. You've got your 1/2 ounce blade like this, and then the 3/4, which is your bigger blade, which usually comes into play a little bit later in the year as they really start concentrating more on the bigger gizzard shad. Right now, they're really feeding a lot on some of this new hatch, which might be 1.5 inches, to 3 inches. We're starting to see some of them bigger gizzard shad kind of mixed in with some of them other shad, kind of underneath them, or you'll see, you'll get in the backs and you'll see maybe just small groups of them, 15, 20 of them darting around, so obviously that's when you want to pull out the head knocker buzzbait. One thing I do want to say, I've got a few of these new X-Toads. This is a design that I believe Connor Cunningham pretty much ramrodded this thing, and it's a super idea. I'm surprised they hadn't come out with it yet, someone else, but no surprise, Crocagator, they're usually on top of it, innovators of a lot of new products and new baits. That's kind of what they're known for. It has been for the history of Crocagator, and obviously it's going to continue now being on top of things. Smaller companies get a lot of good, solid feedback from anglers, local anglers, national anglers, and they come up with ideas or they improve products, in a way that's going to make a big difference in fishing. And the deal with this is, it's got a hole built into it. I don't know if you can see it right here. There's a hole built into the frog. This is called the X-Toad. Okay, and right now it comes in 4 different colors. You got a pearl, a black, a chartreuse, and then the gray, the ghost gray that's so popular. But I rigged one up here to see how it rigged up. Man, that thing rigged up really nice. You can see this trailer hook. What it's built for is that you take a trailer hook, a number 2 or number 3. I actually rigged it with a number 3. It's slightly bigger, and you Crockett Gator actually has a video out. I won't spend a whole lot of time on it. Just go to Crockett Gator YouTube, and we've got videos out showing you how to rig it. But basically, you take that trailer hook, and you got this hole, and that shows you right where to run in the point. You run that point in, you run it right out like you normally would, and then it leaves your round access for your baits hook exposed there, and then you run your bait hook through that. Let me see if I can pull that up out of there. You run that bait hook, you can kind of see it right there, and you bring it through there, okay, and then it allows it to lay in there flat, and you got your trailer hook and your main hook, and that thing runs straight. And what it does is it keeps it rigid out here and keeps it from folding or tangling up in these in the legs, which the last several years we've been throwing a horny toad or another frog style bait on these, and we were running trailer hooks on there because there's a lot of sharp strikes on the buzz baits, and it would work good for a while, but then it would start tangling. Your legs would get wrapped in there, so it would kind of defeat the whole purpose. You got a trailer hook, but your bait's not working properly. Where now it will. You got this setup with your trailer hook for your sharp strikes. Crockett Gator has moved the blade forward, a little forward to hit forward on the head, opening this gap up here between the wire bend and the tip of your hook. So it's opened that gap up for to ensure better hookups, and now allowing you to run a trailer hook and a large trailer hook on the back of it. So that's going to be huge this fall to hook up with a lot of baits or with a lot of fish that tend to kind of sharp strike, and especially with like now when that topwater bait's really starting, they don't get quite as aggressive. A lot of times they'll come up and they'll smack it or kind of sharp strike you, where this should really help that a lot, catch your sharp striking bass. So if you haven't seen that X-Toad, like I said, get on Crockett Gator. Well, if you're watching this video, you're on Crockett Gator YouTube channel, but just look up the X-Bite and see how that's rigged. So this bait, I can tell you, we'll be throwing this Sunday in the Anglers in Action. I expect to catch a few on it, and look forward to the rest of the fall being able to throw this bait and have that trailer hook properly set on that. So, as far as topwaters, like I said, that's really coming on. Don't overlook it. Right now, your half-ounce Crockett Gator X-Bite with the new X-Toad on it. Your Choppos are going to work real good. Your spooks, some days you want to throw a spook, a real slow action back in there, and then same deal with a spook. The retrieve can make a world of difference when you're working topwater baits. Some days you almost got to burn a buzz bait. You really want to work your topwater real erratic, real fast, and then some days they're just not actively feeding hard, or they just don't want it fast, because maybe the bluegill or shad aren't real active and they're not moving real fast. So you just want to obviously imitate what they're feeding on. So if they're moving fast, you want a fast retrieve. If they're not, you want to slow it down. So just vary your retrieve on your topwater regardless what topwater bait you're using, and that may have made the difference in getting the topwater bite, because this time of year they're usually going to be good fish, so you don't want to overlook the topwater bite. Another bait that we're starting to throw, and it's a glide bait. There's a bunch of glide baits out there right now, and there's some really nice looking glide baits out there. And I mean, the price range is anywhere from 20 bucks to 150 bucks. Just depends on what you want to do, how much you want to spend, if you think it's worth it or not. Some people swear by them, some don't. This is actually a river to sea glide bait. This is the 168 we're throwing out. We threw this yesterday and caught a nice one on it. Threw it off and on. This is a bait just like Topwater. When they're on it, you don't want to miss it. It stays just below the surface when you want to reel it. You want to throw it all the way to the bank and start reeling it. Kind of just a slow, steady retrieve. Sometimes raise your rod tip up, speed it up so it'll come to the surface and make a little bit of a wake, and then let it go back down. That's how I like to throw the thing. And when they hit it and they crush it. So the glide bait is coming into play right now. It's just starting, and it'll get better, for the next several weeks too. The jig, we're still throwing the jigs. Obviously flipping shallow docks, maybe brush piles. I got my hands on some of the new Crockett Gator swim jigs. They've done this right too. It's got the nose coming vertically or horizontally out of the head to keep that bait swimming parallel. It's got a real light weed guard in it. When you're swimming a jig, especially at the Ozarks around docks, you really hardly even need a weed guard. So it's got a real light weed guard, to keep any interference with a fish possibly getting hooked up. It's got a real stout, real good hook. And then it's also got the keeper on it, just like the X-Bite. So when you're pushing your plastic up on this swim jig, you got the same style, like say the Wheezy jig or the X-Bite, and now the swim jig has got the wire keepers that once you push your plastic up on there, whatever it is, if it's say a swim bait, a single tail grub, a swamp bug, whatever it is you put on there. Once you put it on there, just remember, turn that thing 90, shove it on there, and then turn it back the way you want it. Push on there, and it's going to hold that bait on there snug and solid for many fish. So that's another big deal that Crockett Gator has put into the industry, is the proper keeper that will hold plastics, soft plastics. Nowadays a lot of the soft plastics are real soft because obviously they look real and they feel real to fish when they grab it. So the softer plastics a lot of times will get better bites, or at least the fish will hang on to it longer. But then obviously that soft plastic will a lot of times tear or break away from the old conventional style keepers on jigs, buzz baits and things, where the Crockett Gator keepers are definitely the way to go. I expect that probably much everybody in the industry to kind of copy Crockett Gator's designs, which is nothing new, as we all know. But it's just the way to go as far as you don't want to catch one fish and then your bait tears or wallers out, and then it's junk then. So a lot of your baits, your real good baits like the Kitex, they're really good baits, but they're really soft. The Yamamotos are real good baits, but they're real soft. Some of your other swim baits are same deal. they're soft to be lifelike, but unless you've got the proper type of keeper on your baits, you catch a fish and they're torn. They're not very good unless you want to go through the whole super glue mess in your boat. So swim baits, like I said, swim baits, we're throwing swim baits right now, just something to kind of copy the size of shad that they're feeding on. You can catch a ton of fish on a little swim bait right now, and you can just cast it to the bank. You can cast it around docks, you can cast it over brush. You're going to catch a lot of fish. You'll catch a lot of small fish on it, but you will catch some keepers. So after some fish have seen a ton of baits out there, you'll downsize your baits to a small swim bait. You'll be surprised of how many fish you can actually catch on a little swim bait, especially in the fall. Just below the surface, you can work this thing down 10 foot. You can throw them same shad balls like a rattle trap or something, you know darn well right that they get used to all that rattle and all that noise. And after you catch a fish or two out of a school, they're going to get used to that. They're going to get keen to that noise. Is going to relate to danger to them, compared to like a small, quiet, silent little swim bait. You can throw back into that same school and probably pull a couple more fish out of a school that you've been catching some fish in. So don't overlook that. So, man, that's that's this report. As we get into fall, some of these baits will excel. Some of your topwater baits will excel. We're just getting into the shallow bite. We had a good shallow bite in August. We always kind of seem to, and that's kind of backed off a little bit. Like I said, the real shallow bite, water was full pool. It went up into the grass, and way back in the shallows, a lot of fish move back there. Now they pull that water, it drops a little bit. A lot of times the shad will back off, especially if they're pulling current. The shad will back off from way back in the shallows, and then that's where you got to back out of the backs to maybe catch a few fish. Your main lake bite is just starting. Your main lake points, secondary points, that's starting up. You can get a good topwater bite early on main lake if it's cloudy. Don't overlook that. Run that for a while, but that may go away pretty quick. So if you come down this weekend, try some of these baits we talked about. You may have to really mix it up. You may have to go main lake. You may have to go halfway back. You may have to go way in the backs. Switch up maybe a bottom bait. The bottom bite hasn't been nowhere near the mid-range water column or the top, and I expect that to kind of increase as we move further into the fall and that water cools down and the shad are coming up. So keep that in mind. Try to keep your eyes open for shad. Fish around your shad. As always, when you're down here, just be careful. Wear your life jackets, even pre-fishing. Put your life jacket on. And just keep your eyes open for incoming boats out of coves, what have you. We're going to have a lot of foggy days here coming up because it's that time of year. Just don't run in the fog. That's all I can tell you. I don't care if you got the best units. I got the best units out there. The Garmin's got mapping, got everything. If it's foggy, I do not run in the fog. It's not worth it. You cannot see floating debris. You cannot see, old man Jones out there running his trot lines or crappie fishing or trolling. You can't see him in the fog on these graphs. The only way you can assure you're going to have a safe day if it's foggy, just put the trolling motor down, just start fishing somewhere. Just don't run in the fog. That's all I can tell you. So most of our tournament directors are smart enough to know if it's foggy, they're not letting loose of the boats to get out there and have an unnecessary accident. So just keep that in mind. But other than that, man, get down here. We're going to get into some really good fishing here. It's just starting for the fall, and in the next several weeks, for maybe I'll say 2 months, 2.5 months, and then mid to late November it kind of peaks.